The Robert Scott Bell Show.
Sometimes you got to figure out the mystery behind the man, the myth, the legend. Tom Woods, my good friend here, he drops by on the Robert Scott Bell Show from time to time, and of course we interviewed him prior to the Nullify Now event. We are now at the Nullify Now event doing some recording, and got the real strength behind Tom. His wife, Heather Woods.
Well, thank you very much.
Heather, it's a pleasure to have you on board here, and I'm glad to interview you, especially because when we first met, this is true of everybody. When I meet people, it's always health questions because there's not a lot of access to natural medicine kind of stuff. Like, it's all doctoring.
Right.
And people are waking up. You have kids. I have kids. We all at one point go, do I really want to drug my kids? Do I really want to just shoot them up with things? Or maybe there's some other things going on. And so we started an interaction like that, and you kind of put things to the test, didn't you?
I did. We have 4 young girls, and most of them had food allergies of some sort or another. We didn't know this at the time, but, we had behavioral issues or emotional issues or always in the bathroom kind of deal. So at different times I would take each child to the doctor saying there's something wrong, and I would always get the, no, that's what kids do, and there's nothing wrong. And I'd say, well, she can't sleep and she can't breathe, and no, stop being a worrywart.
They really kind of said it like that. You just kind of...
I was told with my 2.5-year-old when she had almost autistic-like symptoms where she couldn't be in a group of people, she would rock back and forth, and I said, something's just not right. And he said, you just have a bratty kid. And I said, wow, okay, thank you. Not that I'm above that.
No, but it's not like you're a non-disciplined home or family. I mean, the kids are awesome. So,
well, thank you.
So the thing is, you got to start questioning it. And at what point do you say, I think the doc doesn't know what he's talking about?
Yeah, it was, my middle daughter, Veronica, was about 2.5 years old, and she was in gymnastics, and she would just spend the whole time crying. And I thought, she loves life. She likes to be out and around, and this wasn't right. So actually had a nanny because I was pregnant at the time, and she was helping me out, and I said, what is wrong with this kid? And she said, you might want to look into a chiropractor.
Oh.
And at this point I said, I'll do whatever my child needs. And it was just that mom's instinct, something's not right.
Yes.
And so that's sort of where we kind of got started. And I was still of the, I don't know, chiropractors are kind of weird, aren't they? And I don't know.
It's the programming, isn't it? I mean, we've all been programmed in the Western world to believe that modern medicine is faultless and it's the top of the heap, and anything else is somehow less than. If we acknowledge it for maybe a little thing, we can't do anything more than that.
Right. And it was like, if you go to a chiropractor, it makes you one of those people, and you don't want to tell your GP, oh, I went to a chiropractor.
Right.
I mean, so it was very hush-hush, okay, under the radar.
Don't they use, emotional embarrassment, or they actually use, emotional games to try and keep you their customer?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even our doctor on his website was, I'm here for the family. I want to, find out what's the root of the problem. I don't want to just cover it up. And I thought, well, this is going to be a great doctor. And, by the time I took in the second child and the third child with vastly different symptoms, and I kept getting, we'll give her, one of them had a yeast infection. And I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, here's some nystatin and some antibiotics. And I did know enough to know antibiotics don't work to cure yeast infections.
Right.
So
Good.
I just started Googling, what do I do? And at some point, Tom said, there's this great guy. His name is Robert Scott Bell. He knows all this stuff.
Crazy dude. Don't listen to him.
I know, man. I mean, he's intense. But it was great. We started, Googling things. And I thought, it makes sense. And, I don't want to... I'm still not one of those, I just jump in all the way.
Yeah, you do your homework.
Really
which is
research
good.
it.
Yeah. I think approaching anything with a degree of skepticism, I think, is responsible, especially as a parent.
Especially with kids, and you have to. And so, we did that for each child. We had them allergy tested, which I asked my doctor to do, and he said, well, that's a lot of work for us. What the heck? I'm paying for it.
Excuse me? Yeah.
So we went through our chiropractor, and so they did these tests, and it turns out my kids were level 5 plus allergic to peanuts and soy and
reacting to everything,
eggs and dairy. And I thought, oh my gosh! So I took them off. It was a very rough 2 years where we had to relearn how to eat.
I remember,
oh man, it was rough. And the whole time I was watching my kids get better. And I thought, well, I've just spent 2 years trying to figure out what's wrong with you, and fighting. And And so, in a way, it was a relief because it's within my power to make them better.
That's a very good point, because on one hand, it's a relief to you, but many people would rather, Doc, just give me a drug, right?
Make
because
it go away.
They don't. The responsibility means, I might have to do something. But for you, you embraced it.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard, and there were times where I said to Tom, I don't want to get up today because I know it's going to be, what do I make them to eat? How do I contain their fits? What do you do with a child who freaks out all the time because she literally can't handle the stimuli?
Right.
You can't punish them. So it was a learning experience.
Seriously, yeah.
And we had no, our doctors weren't there to provide guidance. It was, well, you're weird and that's not the problem. Okay. And I'm a young mother, so when older men kind of tell me, that's dumb, and very authoritatively, I feel like, okay, I must be stupid. But there was just always something in there that thought, okay, there's something not right. So we've spent the last 5 years really dealing with food allergies. Mm-hmm. And, myself, I've just been really run down. I've had 5 pregnancies. We lost one back to back to back, and I basically just get sick the whole time.
You demineralized your body. You know that. These little babies take it out of you.
You're the first one who's ever said anything to me about that. And I would go to doctor saying, I can't get up in the morning.
Right.
I can't function. I'm ready to sleep.
Have some more caffeine. What do they say, right?
Yeah, here's some Ambien so you can sleep at night.
Okay, sleep at night. And that's the ironic thing, is that you think you're so exhausted you'd be able to sleep.
Yeah,
but
and
no,
you can't.
Your sleep is so disrupted because your metabolism is off. You don't have the minerals to function properly. And, what seems to be now, you're looking right, well, that's common sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was completely not anywhere in the sphere of consciousness, not of the doctors. And, of course, if we listen to those authoritarians who look at you or your kids as having drug deficiencies, more or less,
right,
then we're lost. And it's a scary, scary place to be, especially if you really care and are invested in raising healthy kids.
Right. And that's what I thought. I mean, I grew up in, 80s, 90s, and we were the canned food generation. Like, all came in a can, or we had a lot of frozen chicken from who knows where.
Yeah.
And it was the best we could do. And I thought, when I had kids, I want my kids to know about food. So once they started being about 3 years old, we would say, what's in the strawberry? What's in this? And we thought we were pretty healthy. Mm-hmm. And we did the whole grains. We did, here's some milk until they couldn't have that. And we really cut down on juice and stuff like that. So I thought, well, we're being healthy and we're teaching them about food. And, about 6 months ago, I was saying to Tom, this isn't working. Tom's always tired. He can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Our kids constantly looked ghost-like.
Do they ever have, like, those dark circles under their eyes, right?
Yeah.
And, I always see this with liver and intestinal issues in children. And so you come back to the same scenario. We're overwhelmed, especially kids, by a toxic world. Mm-hmm. We've got to do our level best to clean up our environment. And it isn't about being, a globalist earth muffin like Al Gore. It means about how do we take care of our family right here?
Right.
How do we go local? Can we find local farms? Can we find food, meats, if you do that are really free grazing the way it's been done ever since there's been animals on the planet? They've been eating grass, for instance. And so somehow you must have come into contact with that concept. I
did. We were just talking, and we're not into fad diets. We don't like to it's Atkins, we're going to jump on that. But Tom came to me one day, and he doesn't know this, but I had been praying for about probably 6 months that, because I knew if I was going to make a radical change, he would have to be in with me because it was so hard anyway.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know about what he was about to suggest, but I just, God, I just hope he takes the bull by the horns here, because I knew we all needed something. And, one day he said, there's something called the Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson, and I think we should look into it. And so, being the wife, I kind of hemmed and hawed to make him think, I don't know if I want to do that. And, of course, I was going, oh, thank you. You answered my prayers.
You couldn't just come out and say that to him? What would that mean?
No.
What would that be? Well, he would have a big head about it, right?
Well, I don't know if it's that or if he'd be like, oh, no, it's one of those things she's really happy about. Maybe it's too much.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, so you've learned how to deal with your husband.
Yes.
All wives out there, my wife included, they know how to, we're going to approach you just right. So.
Yes, exactly. And, so we got Mark's book. I think it's called The 21-Day Total Transformation something. Mm-hmm. And I read it in about 2 hours. You can get so much information from this, and it's stuff I thought I knew. And so I was going, yeah, I'll read it. Tom, leave me alone. And I was going, oh my gosh. I said, well, we've kind of been doing everything wrong. But it was that his premise is, get rid of the grains, get rid of the starches, get rid of these sugars, and go back to eating healthy food where it's meats and vegetables and some fruit and nuts and oils and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but his thing is more of you have to find organic stuff.
Clean it up, right?
Right.
Wasn't that one of the first things we talked about? I said, we've got to reduce the burden, the toxic burden coming in, especially the kids, because they're smaller bodies. They eat more for their body weight, metabolize a lot more. And my story, my whole history was such that it took me 2 years at the age of 24 to undo most of the ailments I suffered for 24 years. Now, starting at the kid level with kids, it's a lot quicker if you do this. But it was really extraordinary when we connected, because I felt for you as a parent, right? Much less the care and concern I have for you and Tom as people because of all of the wonderful things you're doing. So it was really exciting to see the transformation happen.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, I think the biggest block in going primal, as I call it, is the emotional side of it.
Ooh, talk to me about that. What was the emotional side?
Well, it was, okay, here's something, again, where most society is going to think you're completely nuts. And we're fairly level-headed people.
So it's a social consciousness kind of thing. We don't want people to look at us funny, right? Where's that come from?
I mean, I guess we're used to that in a sense. We're always sort of the oddballs out.
Yeah.
But also just being with friends and relatives, and I was thinking in my head, oh my gosh, like when we go out to eat or when we're at picnics, what do we do? Are we the weird people who are like, it's my one cooler, don't anyone touch it?
I know I am. But if you want to touch it and eat it, fine. It just means less for me. But it's okay. I'm happy you're healthy.
Yeah, well, sure. Well, you're much nicer than I am. So, I mean, it was that. And then it was because I've just been fighting with food and stuff for so long, I thought, this is going to add another layer of stress of now I'm going to have to be on my toes this way as well. And I'm completely committed to my children, and I would do it for them in a heartbeat. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm a planner. And so I said, Tom had said, well, why don't we start 3 months from now? I said, okay.
So you can plan your transition, right?
Yeah. And I thought, good, we'll read books. I read a lot, different sources, and we really talked about what are foods we like, because I wanted to start with foods that we really enjoy instead of, okay, kids, here's a rutabaga that we never had. That's great.
Here, rutabaga smoothie, kids, come on up. We're talking with Heather Woods. She's absolutely wonderful, wife of Tom Woods. And we're going to take a break now because I want to follow up on this, where the Primal diet went, other things that have evolved here. Because as I look at her now here at Nullify Now, she looks terrific, and I've seen her in years past where she was going through some struggles. So we'll talk about the recovery here and how it empowers all of you. Are you a mom, a dad out there? This is a story. Take to heart. You could transform your life and your kids for the better. We'll be right back on the Robert Scott Bell Show after this.
The Robert Scott Bell Show. Robert Scott Bell Show.
If you grew up in America, the West, in a modern context, you grew up in what's a culture of convenience. It's all about how can we make it easier. And I'm not opposed to making things easier, but at a certain point, when that ease sends us into a state of dependence, drug dependence, illness, ailment, especially if you have kids, you start sitting back and going, well, we might have to be inconvenienced in order to do what's right.
Right.
I'm talking with Heather Woods here at the Nullify Now conference, wife of Tom Woods, and we'll talk to you about her blog so you can find it. I'll have it linked up in the show notes today, because it's a transformational journey that anybody can do. Heather, you'd be like saying it's not like you're like some natural doctor that you grew up with this. I mean, you literally came to it, you started reading, you tested it out, you put it in your toe, right, and found out that every little step of the way, you got feedback that was very positive about the direction you could go here.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So we took a few months to really think about it and how we're going to get foods, and then there was the budget concern. And
did you find that the food was much more expensive all the time, or were there ways you could find it and make it somewhat affordable?
Well, in the beginning, it was more expensive. It was probably an extra $100 a week.
Okay.
But after probably 6 weeks, I thought, okay, now I'm comfortable enough with the foods we can have and how to get them and stuff like that we're able to start trimming that.
Okay.
So I think we will get it back to what it was originally. plus, I mean, there are a lot of things you stock up on. Like, we buy a lot of nuts and then make our own trail mix, and that can be pricey at first, but that lasts us for 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay,
and
so you're changing the way where people would go to the grocery store and buy for today, tomorrow, and maybe the next day.
Right.
And now you're saying, all right, we're investing, and we might have something last for weeks or months.
Right.
So initially, your food budget, you might have to really ramp it up, but then you find ways to navigate. Because that's always been the biggest thing. When they told me, oh, it's too expensive to eat that way, I can speak for me, it was too expensive not to eat that way.
Right.
I was too ill, I was too unhappy and unhealthy that I would cut anything out in order to get well. And I did so. Now it's become a normal part of our diet and life that we would say, all right, this is the priority. If we're going to cut something out, it might be a movie or even a dinner out, which, goes not so far in the budget. It really takes it out of you. When you start doing more home-prepared meals, even if it's a better quality ingredient, you tend to have it stretch further. It's a lot of money spent on going out in America, too.
It is. And what's interesting is, so we start this Primal thing, and for the first 3 weeks, the challenge is stay primal. So eat a lot of, grass-fed butter and meat that's from sources that don't use antibiotics and all this stuff.
Right.
So for the first 3 weeks, we didn't go out to eat. We ate everything at home, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I said, Tom, I didn't realize how much our lives revolved around food and how much it was like we would plan our day according to it. Well, where did we want to eat for lunch that day? And then I'll organize my errands around that.
Wow.
And it was very eye-opening and kind of like, wow, I'm one of those foodie people, and I didn't know it. And
well, God bless my wife, because she prepares just about all the meals here, and it is amazing how much work it is once you start taking all of that in the house instead of going out for the convenience sake. I mean, it's a rarity we get to go out, quite honestly. So, people say, are you sacrificing? Well, I guess you could call it that, but at the same time, where my wife and I have been health-wise, we've elected to make the decision that it's worth the effort, even though sometimes we'll grumble. It's work, especially my wife. God bless her, all she does for us. But the end result is quite extraordinary, especially when I say, looking at you were dealing with some health issues and concerns, and you're looking better. You've dropped weight. Your skin looks clear. Your eyes are looking clear. I mean, it's an amazing transformation. And we hadn't seen you since Kansas City Nullify now.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. And it's like, if I saw you every day, it'd be harder to tell, right? You see yourself every day. But when it's like from here to there, it's like, wow, very impressive.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of work. And, what we found when we first tried I wanted to know from real people, how does this way of eating really affect you and a family, and how doable is it? And it was really hard to find this. It was a lot of people who wrote books about being paleo, primal, whatever. It's great and you'll never feel better. Or there were a lot of vegetarians who were saying it's the worst diet in the world. I just wanted a real mom to tell me what should I expect with my children, and I couldn't find that. So we decided to start a blog and sort of chronicle our journey. So the blog is, I think, primalcooks.blogspot.com. And initially Tom was supposed to be doing it with me, and it sort of ended up being me, and every once in a while he'll sort of send me a guest post. And but it kept us honest, and I would just say, here's what we ate today, here's how my kids reacted, here's how we reacted. There are a couple posts where it says, I absolutely hate this thing, I don't want to be doing it. But at the same time, even though when you're going through feeling terrible from the detox, it sort of feels good, because all the stuff is in me, and it's being suppressed by the more bread and sugary stuff I'm eating.
Right.
So it's good it was coming out. And for us, it lasted a little while, but not as long as some people.
Right.
And it's totally different for different people. But I thought, if it helps somebody else to say, well, if I have these many kids and I just can't do it, and we say, well, look, we have 4 who are really, they like to eat. And here's what we were able to do, and here's how it worked. So... and they had a hard time at first, especially my middle child, who had the previous problems. She's always been a carboholic.
Okay, yeah, the carbohydrates are just, you crave them. I talk about in terms of mineral deficiencies, particularly the GTF chromium that is lacking in refined foods, refined carbohydrates, if you will. And then we don't have the ability to transition or let's say, transport these sugars into and out of the cells normally. So we get into states of hypoglycemia very readily. And these are the behaviors that are uncontrollable, almost animalistic in children. And it could happen in adults. So getting back on the let's say whether you do grains or not, but looking at food that is grass-fed, for instance, on the meat family, you now have minerals that are present that are not present in these cows that are fed genetically modified corn, for instance.
Right.
It's just not rife with the minerals that are necessary.
Right. And my kids went completely grainless and without sugar for probably 6 to 8 weeks. And I took some flack for that. People are saying, how can you do this to your children? And I believe kids need grains. And look, Christ wouldn't have fed the people with bread if you weren't supposed to meant to eat it. And and I said, well, that doesn't quite work because he also gave us wine, and we're not meant to drink it all day long, right? And
here, kid, have some wine.
Yeah, right. It'll make you feel better.
Calm you down. Oh, look, the kids are sleeping again.
Yeah,
what did you do?
That's great. I don't have to feed them. No. But I did that because they all had candida. And I've been fighting it with what I can, and it wasn't going away. So I decided, to heck with this. You guys are getting all off of it. And some of them did very well from the beginning. My carbaholic was in a depression for probably about 6 to 7 weeks, to the point where her father was saying, look, we've got to give her some more bread. Like, she can't be this way. And I said, let's just wait it out. Maybe it's just detox. I don't know. So we flushed her with water, and by the 7th week, she was a whole new kid. And so it's scary, the effect that grains have on them. But we have added back in some organic rice and potatoes and things because I do think they need some.
Have they done okay on that since you've reintroduced it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Well, that tells you. The thing is, the body is that, I guess, the temple of evidence, so to speak.
Right.
Because it shows you what it will, if we're able to listen. Now, if you're always raised in a certain way and you always eat the same thing, people will tell me, well, what's the problem? I've always eaten this way. Well, that is the problem, right? Until you stop and start again or renew, you don't learn. You can't learn. It can only be book knowledge. But you, as a mom, a super mom, I will say, you are, has put it to the test like a real scientist in your own family.
It's really been interesting. And not that I would use them as guinea pigs, but because their health dictated that they needed to have something done. And, so that's what we've done. And, they're much more focused. The other day I just said, so do you guys feel any differently now that we've eaten this way? And every single one of them said, yeah, I sleep better. I used to lay awake all night. I thought, you did? I didn't know that. But they were always having bad dreams, and they were always tired and groggy in the morning, and I didn't understand it. And now they wake up, and they're ready to go, and they're ready for school, and it's usually before I'm even awake now. So it's a massive difference. And it's just the way it makes you feel. And you don't know how bad you feel until you feel better and then eat it again.
Exactly. Thank you. That helps because that's the whole point of I didn't know how I was reacting to food because I always had the same food. And I didn't know how bad I was because I was always bad until I started. I mean, simple as switching from tap water to cleaner filter water, spring water. I never tasted the chlorine in tap water until I stopped drinking it. And then I said 2 weeks later, I'm going to tide it. It was like drinking a swimming pool.
And you're like, ugh.
But you're so, let's say, neutralized to the stimuli that is always there. It's kind of like white noise. If you're in a city and you're just visiting the city, like, oh, here's a good example. I went and spoke at the Raleigh Rally for Ron Paul in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, I grew up in the South, so grew up with all the bird sounds in the mornings and stuff. But then when we moved away from there, the sounds were different. I went back, spent 1 night there, 2 nights there, and both mornings I was woken up before the sunrise with these birds. And they were pretty sound, but I was like, I can't sleep. Because I was not used to the sound anymore.
Right.
And so the stimuli is different. And that's why your point is very important, Heather, to start something different, to stop what you're doing in order to get the feedback that you no longer are getting. Or if you are, you're no longer paying attention to because it's become too subtle.
Right. And, I didn't know this until one of my children pointed it out, but apparently many times a day I would say, I'm so tired. Is it nap time yet? Sort of as like a joke. And finally one of them said, like, why are you always tired? I was like, yeah, why am I? I mean, I eat what I thought fairly well, and this is crazy.
I shouldn't be tired.
I shouldn't be tired. I'm way too young for this. And that's what it came down to is, having so many pregnancies that were very rough ruined my metabolism. It didn't matter how much I worked out or what I ate. Was not going to.
We had to restore that which was depleted from you, and it seems like it's working. I'm looking at you today. Now, what other things have you integrated? Any natural medicines or supplements that moms would love to hear about instead of for colds and flus and little things?
All those little things. Yeah. Well, we build it slowly. So I have a 2-year-old who tends to get earaches a lot, or she did. And I thought, I'm not taking her to the doctor to get an antibiotic, which is all they ever do, especially trying to rebuild their gut. And so I started I would make homemade garlic oil, just 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, crush it, put it in, 3 tablespoons of oil, and let it saute for a while.
Yep.
That stuff works wonders.
Isn't that amazing?
You just put 3 drops in there, and the next day she's fine.
Beautiful.
And, so we do stuff like that. And, my kids had some eczema, and so we use this stuff called bag balm, which I thought sounded totally weird, and why would anyone suggest I use that? But okay. Yeah. And, again, and it's interesting to me because these natural things where everyone says, it takes forever to work. I don't like those things. I just want the pill. Give it to me, doctor. Let's go. And that's probably true of some things, but for the things that we've tried, it's almost overnight. This is like miraculous healing.
So the old mythology about natural medicine being slower and less efficient may not be true. Again, your experience showing otherwise.
Right. Yeah. My baby had cracks behind her ears that spread all over her ears. I still don't really know what causes it. I thought it was yeast, but now that she's not on these foods, I don't know. But a friend had suggested do oil of oregano on her neck.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, that's really weird. Why would I do that? But I thought, Robert Scott Bell knows what to do, and if he's going to say that's going to work, then that'll work. And we tried that, and it did heal one ear, and the other one's not quite healed. But still, it's like this magical thing. It's like a magical world that nobody wants you a part of because it's really weird. But you get in there and you're realize,
empowered. Totally. But of course, that disempowers the people who are authoritarian, right, and who want that power over you. So I appreciate so much your willingness to share. What is your blog again?
Primalcooks.blogspot.com.
Primalcooks.blogspot.com. Moms, dads out there, keep up with Heather Woods as you will with Tom. And I look forward to catching up with you again on your healing journeys for those wonderful kids of yours.
Well, thank you very much.